Hi, and welcome to Mark's Motivational Podcast for another Authors Tuesday. Thanks, everybody, for joining me. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by another guest, an author, Debbie Roppolo. I hope I pronounced that correct.
Yes, you did. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks very much for coming on. It's great to meet you. So probably first of all, we'll start the podcast off. If you wouldn't mind just telling the listeners a little bit about yourself and the books you've written would be great, Debbie, please.
Okay. Well, I'll be glad to, Mark. Actually, I've been writing for several years. I've been writing since I'm going to say, oh my goodness, I'm very poor at math. I'm better at writing than I am math.
Me
But
too.
uh, I think
Yeah.
that's the way it is with all writers. We're better at writing than we are at math. But I started writing, I believe, in 1996. And the first thing I ever wrote was a story for Chicken Soup for the Soul. And that story was entitled Some Snowballs Don't Melt, about my father's dog. And from there on, I've written for some more Chicken Soup for the Soul books, in addition to some newspapers and magazines around the United States. Some of the books I've written, I write mostly children's books, and I have a series called Amelia Frump and Her Peanut Butter Loving Overactive Imagination. And I have a cookbook, and who would have thought that it's all about peanut butter? I bet you didn't know there's so many different recipes that you can make using peanut butter.
Oh,
But
wow.
I
Yeah.
did a little bit of research. I found that. Um, and then there's a sequel to the first Amelia book. And I have a younger son on the autism spectrum.
Okay.
And I wrote a book about autism and siblings dealing with someone on the autism spectrum, because quite often siblings are forgotten
Mm,
whenever you have someone on the autism spectrum. All your focus is on the person who's on the
mm,
spectrum. And sometimes the siblings aren't intentionally left out, but they are.
yeah.
And it's talking about dealing with the young man's feelings toward his brother and his fears and everything. I also have a children's book entitled If a Chicken Could Shop.
That's a great name. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I also have a parenting book entitled The Toilet's Overrunning. Excuse me, the toilet is overflowing and the dog is wearing my underwear.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's
thank
brilliant.
you. Thank you.
Yeah.
You'll find that parenting is really an adventure.
Mm,
And sometimes you just got to make the most of everything and find the
mm,
humor in it.
yeah.
But I live here in Texas in the
Hmm.
United States. I don't know if you're familiar with the city of San Antonio,
I've heard
where
of
the
it. Yeah, I
Alamo,
haven't been there. Yeah, I've heard of it before. Yeah.
right, where the Alamo is. I live in between Austin and San Antonio.
Oh, cool, cool. Yeah, that's great. Your books sound brilliant. I'm looking forward to getting them myself. And where can people purchase them? Are they available on Amazon, Debbie?
Yes, sir, they are. You can find them on Amazon.com. You can find them on Barnes and Noble. You can find them wherever you can buy books online.
Brilliant, brilliant. That's great. Yeah. So, like, if you want to send me, do you have a website? If you want to send me a link to your website, and I can put it on the show notes as well for people from Ireland to have a look at your books as well.
I would love it. I will send you the link, but it's Deborah
Okay. Yeah.
Ropolo.com.
Great. Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, because I love what you've said there about the book you've written, about like your kids if you have an autistic child. That's a great message you're portraying there in your book. That's really good, and like it's great for anybody that is taking your books, like to kind of, you wouldn't intentionally leave your other children out, but that's really good. Like, and did it take you long to write that book, Debbie?
Well, it really didn't. Absolutely, excuse me.
Okay.
Actually, it was it was a mission of love, I will say, because my older son, who is
Yeah.
typical,
Mm.
seemed to be a little bit just surly, just a little bit bitter about something when after his brother was diagnosed. This is years ago.
Yeah.
Um, and I set him down and I said, "Hey, buddy, what's going on?"
Mm.
He said, "I feel like you don't see me anymore." He said, "I feel like I don't matter anymore. You spend all your time with Joseph and you just forget about me." And he told me he was scared. He told me he didn't understand autism. He told me that he didn't really know what it was. And what really cut me to the core is he said, and as his brother, I feel like I should be able to fight this for him.
Okay.
I don't
Yeah.
know how to fight it.
Mm.
And it scares me even more. So we talked about it and I assured him that, hey, look, you're not forgotten. We love you both the same. It's just
Mhm.
taking a little bit more extra effort right now, Joseph.
Yeah.
But he said, there's other kids out there who feel the way I do. You have the ability to get a message out there. Why don't you try writing a book? So after talking with him, I wrote the book, He's My Brother, and it deals with the same feelings that Jonathan had. And it has a little bit of information about autism and a few facts about it and a few resources.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely brilliant. Like, fair play to you for doing that. That's absolutely brilliant because even like being a parent myself, and when you've got like kids with different ages, like in my like I've got a 4-year-old, and then I have a 12-year-old and a 16-year-old. So there's
Oh
the
my.
good mix, good mix there. But like you can find you kind of spend a lot of time with the 4-year-old, and like you wouldn't leave any of the kids out. It wouldn't be like that, but they could even feel that as well, couldn't they? Like, it's the same kind of principle, couldn't it? So that's great for kids that are reading that, teenagers, isn't it, Deborah?
Right.
Yeah,
You're absolutely right because I can see your 16-year-old saying, "Hey, look, hey, I'm still here. I
yeah,
want your attention too." Because no matter what age they are, they still need our attention. They
mm,
still they don't want to admit it at 16,
yeah.
but they crave it. They crave our attention, our approval. So you're right. It is essential.
Yeah, yeah. No, because it's funny, you've got me thinking that, like, like it's gas the food for thought, because I should probably do that more with my eldest son, because he wouldn't intentionally leave anybody out, but it's you find they have their own kind of life, but you know what I'm saying, Deborah? It's yeah, it's interesting.
You're right. You're right. And it
Yeah.
is still easy to
Mm,
fall into that, I'm going to say, trap,
mm,
because even though now Joseph is much older and he's a lot more independent and my
mm,
son is grown,
yeah.
I still sometimes will say, "Hey, Joseph, why don't we go over here?" And my brother will say, excuse me, I'm sorry. My son will say, "Hey, why can't I come along? What about me?"
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what you have to do for one, you have to do for the others. And sometimes we're so
Mm,
busy, though,
yeah.
it's hard to remember.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. You want to get a little computer in your brain to to put all the memories in. Like, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But no, that's great. Like, I love all your books. They sound really, really good. So I'm looking forward to sharing them with everybody. So as well as that, have you always written yourself, Deborah? Have you always been a writer? Where did the journey begin for yourself?
Well, actually, it's pretty hard to believe, but years ago, um, I was a police officer
Okay. Yeah.
over here in Texas. I was a police officer for several years.
Mm.
I That ended whenever I was going back to our local university because I wanted to be an athletic coach. And I was studying to do that while I was in law enforcement. And I had a near fatal car accident
Oh God.
and I received severe nerve damage in my right arm. I had over 200 stitches and staples in my face and in my head. So obviously I couldn't be in law enforcement anymore, so I had to do something else. I've always had a very active imagination. How many people do you know of who would take a horse into a house and have what I have on my website as well? As I actually did this, I had tea parties with chickens. Uh, so I decided to write. I had a lot of time on my hands. It helped me decompress. It helped me get my thoughts out. So I wrote. I began writing at that point after my accident.
Great. Like well done to you, because a lot of people, when they have something like that to happen, somebody like a life changing thing that happened, like, thank God you're okay now. But like
Thank you.
no, well done to you for choosing a different path, and making yourself successful. Like it's so important to try stuff like that, isn't it, Deborah?
It is. And that's something I've always believed in, because what beginning as a child, my parents always told me, you don't give up. If things happen to you, you continue to go forward. You're going to meet obstacles, but find ways to get over them,
Yeah,
and
exactly. Yeah.
believe in yourself.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's what I've carried throughout my life. I try to install it into my boys
Mm.
as well. But,
What great advice your parents gave you all them years ago. Like that's that's really really good advice to give to anybody, really, isn't it, Deborah? For anybody that's listening, that don't give up, don't give up, because it leads me nicely on to the next question, Deborah. Like, kind of what kind of keeps you motivated, because it is a motivational podcast. But what kind of keeps you motivated in your writing, and especially over the last 2 years with the pandemic, has that affected you much?
well, it has and it hasn't. You get to the point whenever we were all worldwide on lockdown.
Yeah.
And I did get inspired for some humor stories that I'm working on, because at one point you realize you must really love your family, because you're locked in the house with them, literally.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I kid you not, Mark. The UPS, our delivery man, came to the front porch, and I was so hungry to see someone else
Mm.
besides my family. I wanted to invite him in for coffee. He said, 6 feet away, ma'am. So,
Brilliant. Yeah.
right. But
Yeah.
it is, it's hard. It's been hard. And I believe everyone has experienced a little bit of depression because of what's going on.
Yeah.
But you got to go outside and look around, and you're still alive. You're
Exactly.
still alive. You have a purpose
Hmm.
in this world. You may not have it, you may not be able to find it right now, but that doesn't mean it's not within your grasp. You,
Mm.
you just got to keep going. You got to keep striving, because you can do anything that
Hmm.
you put your mind to.
Yeah.
And we've lost so many worldwide,
Hmm.
and those close to us, and maybe not so close, but they would want us to continue. We're blessed to be here.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I agree with you 100% there. Well said. So, no, that's brilliant, Deborah. Like that's really great for anybody that's listening. Thanks very much for sharing that with us. And
Well,
as
thank
well
you.
as that, would you kind of have a schedule you use for your writing? Just say like to write a certain amount of words a day, or what way do you kind of work it yourself, Deborah?
Well, I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning every
Okay.
morning, and I take a small amount of time for myself. Maybe jot some things down, check emails. I am also an editor. I'm
Very
the
good.
bad
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah.
I'm the bad guy. So I, I do some editing. Um, Maybe go out for a walk, and then get the guys ready for their day and run errands, come back, do a little bit more writing and editing. So it's being a parent as well. I'm sure you're familiar and with
Yeah.
volunteering, and you do it whenever you can.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Like, I suppose not to put yourself under any pressure. Really, it's kind of, whenever you have the time. Like, because what I found helped me over the last couple of years is I kind of what I do is I'd write down the important things I need to do during the day, like, and tick them off. Like, for anybody that's listening to yourself, like, just as you tick them off, you kind of have a sense of achievement. Just the little things you're ticking off.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
yes, it
yes.
does help. And I don't know if you do this as well. Sometimes I'm really big into character conversations. I want
Very
them to
good.
be
Yeah.
as authentic as I can be. So sometimes I'll walk down the grocery store aisles and talk out the conversations to myself. Of course, it's always whispered.
Yeah, yeah,
And you can imagine the looks I get if people walk by. She's
yeah,
talking to herself. But
yeah. But they think you're just remembering what you have to get in shopping.
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah, yeah,
She's talking about chicken shopping, Herbert. So I can
very
imagine
good.
that someone saying that.
Yeah, yeah. No, yeah, because that's great. Because whenever, like, when you're busy, a busy lifestyle, like us all, you have to kind of fit it in when you can, isn't it? Really? Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right. And you also have to take time for yourself too, just to
Hmm.
relax, because if you push it too hard, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, but if you push yourself too hard, you're going to find yourself mentally blocked.
Hmm.
And that
Yeah,
frustration is just going to build and build and build unless you relax.
exactly. Yeah. And have you ever experienced writer's block yourself, Deborah? Have you ever kind of experienced it, and how did you kind of deal with that yourself?
I have. Whenever I began writing the first Amelia Frump book, I wanted it to be perfect. I wanted it to be pristine. But then I read back over it and it just sounded so blah,
Mm.
so plain. So I erased it and started over, and I just couldn't find the words. And then I started watching the antics of my two boys and
Mm.
how they interacted with each other. And then I started remembering some of the adventures that I had as a child.
Great.
And
Yeah.
I, I mean, I found that if you find something, if you're writing and you think of an idea, and if it makes you giggle, chances are it'll make your,
People are laugh as
yeah,
well. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
That's great. Yeah. That's great. Like, it was a great way to kind of get yourself out of block, because, like they say, you can't feel two emotions at once. You can't be kind of sad and, you know um stuck if you're smiling and laughing about a memory.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that
It's
does
like,
help.
yeah, it's like when my kids were smaller. That's how I got my inspiration for my book. I kind of made them up stories, funny stories, crazy characters for Ben and I, and they'd be falling around the place laughing. So it was a couple of years later, I decided to put them in a book, and it's great to actually have your own book, isn't it? It's brilliant.
It is. It is. And
Yeah,
congratulations on yours.
yeah, you too, absolutely brilliant. Yeah, no, it's great. It's great fun. Yeah, and I suppose what other how can I put it? What writers and what's your favorite books to read yourselves, and what kind of inspired you to write your books? Is there any books you can think of, Deborah?
Well, actually, I was a huge fan of Beverly Cleary, the
Okay.
Ramona books,
Oh
whenever I
yeah,
was a
yeah.
little girl, because I found Ramona was a lot like me. Ramona, if you remember, did all kinds of zany, crazy things.
That's right. Yeah.
And one thing that I did in particular that was like Ramona, I took breakfast cereal that was shaped like cat food, dry cat food, and I took it to church and I was eating it. And I was a little girl, about 5. And they said, "Well, what are you eating?" "I'm eating cat food. It's the only thing my mom will let me have." And,
Yeah.
but things like that, of course, now as a parent, now that mortifies me. but adventures that Ramona had really, as a child reading that book, I'm like, oh, she's like me. I loved Beverly Cleary. I liked Judy Blume.
Mhm.
Was also an inspiration for me, as well as, even though I haven't written any horse books,
Mhm.
Walter Farley, the Black Stallion,
Okay.
inspired me
Yeah.
as well. I liked as well.
Great stuff. They sound great. That's a great list. Yeah. That's a great list, Debbie. Yeah, Deborah, that's a great list because
Thank you.
and how about yourself? What about music? Do you have any favorite music yourself? Do you like listen to relax to?
I like to listen. I guess I like listening to a little bit of everything.
Mhm.
I go all the way from the old classic, country classic, Patsy Cline.
Oh, class, yeah.
I listen to some, sometimes if I'm in the mood, I'll listen to some Lionel Richie. I'll listen to some heavy metal bands
Mhm.
from the
Good
old
mix, yeah.
days.
Yeah.
Yeah, some hair bands every once in a while.
Mhm.
I just like music in general. I've
Mhm.
enjoyed music whenever I was younger, and I played in a
Okay.
marching band, so
Oh, great.
high
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I was gonna say you're like the Jane of all trades instead of the Jack of all trades, like myself.
that's a good one. I never thought of myself like that, but I guess so.
Brilliant, yeah. And I wonder, could you just for people that are watching on YouTube, could you maybe show your books there for people that are watching, please?
Sure, absolutely. This is my most recent. If a chicken could
Oh, very
shop.
good. Oh, that's brilliant, isn't it?
Thank you.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
That was
And who
inspired by
did?
my. This is my. I don't have all of them, unfortunately, with me. This is the toilet's overflowing, and the dog is wearing my underwear.
That's great.
That I sympathize with that woman.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is one of my Amelia Front books. This is the Peanut Butter Loving Cookbook.
Oh,
And
class. Yeah.
actually, it's has activities in it.
Hmm.
And see if I can pull it up here. Has some activities
Oh, great. Yeah, that's
as
brilliant.
well
Yeah.
as recipes and some facts about it. But you can
Yeah.
find all of them wherever you would find
Mm.
most books online.
Yeah, because my son would love that. My son is a real Nutella fan, or like you almost get that for him.
Oh,
He loves
well,
peanut butter and Nutella. He'd eat it all day, you know.
oh,
So
it's
that's a book for him.
ah. Well,
Yeah.
I still like peanut butter, but my family, on the other hand, you have to test every recipe several times
Hmm.
to get it perfect.
Yeah.
So my family is tired of peanut butter. I'm not, but my family is.
No, that's a great idea. Well done. Like that's really good, Deborah. Brilliant.
Well,
And I
thank
can
you.
just ask you, different people I've had on the podcast. I've only started doing it recently myself. Um, listen to music while they're writing. Have you ever done that yourself? I suppose not lyrics, but even some classical music. Have you ever done that yourself?
Um, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you on that one.
Oh, I'm sorry, sorry. Like when you're writing, listen to music. Do you ever listen to
Uh-huh.
music while you write?
I do. I do. I like to sometimes listen to soothing music like instrumentals. It depends. If I
Yeah.
need to settle down a little bit,
Mm.
I'll do that. If I need to keep from falling asleep, if it's been a
Mm.
long day, sometimes that's whenever I'll turn on the heavy metal bands,
Great.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
Disturbed, The Sound of Silence.
Mm.
Nice drive. Well, it's not really a driving beat, but it's pretty loud. Gets pretty loud.
Because it's great to be able to change your state, like it's all about changing your state, like for like you're saying, if excuse me, if you want to get into a writing state, it's about changing your state you're in. Do you find that helps you?
It does.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it does.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it's great. But it's been great talking to you, Deborah. Thanks a lot for coming on the podcast.
Well, thank you so much, Mark, for having me.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed talking to you as well.
yeah. And can I just ask you as well? What's your favorite place to travel yourself on holidays? I know you mentioned you went to Italy before. That's a fabulous country, isn't it?
I loved going to Italy. Basically, just going anywhere.
Mm,
I enjoy going. We actually enjoy walking on nature trails on the weekends
brilliant.
because
Right.
nature is the best medicine. You can go out and relax and decompress and
Mm.
get your thoughts in line. And if you want to talk out that conversation between characters, no one's going to hear you. So,
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. Brilliant. Yeah, thanks. And I suppose one more thing before you go, Debbie, if that's okay, if you could kind of give any writers advice about keeping themselves motivated in the writing, what would you say? Even a short sentence you could think of for people that are listening, please.
sure, it's going to be cliche, but don't give up. You
Hmm.
need to think about everyone else who was rejected. I think Dr. Seuss, one of the
Hmm.
best children's authors of all times, rejected something like what 60 times
Yeah,
before
yeah,
his
that's
book
right.
was published.
Mm.
A lot of your major publishers, I think the Velveteen Rabbit
Mm.
was also rejected several times. Either that or Peter Rabbit. I think it was the
That's right. Yeah.
Velveteen who was rejected several
Wow.
times.
Yeah.
But don't give up. Just because you get one no doesn't mean
Mm.
it's not meant to be published. Go back, look at your manuscript. More than likely, you've made some mistakes that you missed before. Correct
Mm.
them, tighten up your writing, and resubmit it again.
That's great advice, Deborah. Thank you so much for coming on. It's brilliant. Yeah, because that's brilliant for anybody like that's listening. I really, really appreciate all the advice you've given tonight. It's been second to none. That's brilliant. So, Deborah, I wish you all the best in your future writing as well. And make sure you send me on the links so I can share with everybody.
I will. And thank you again, Mark, so much for having me. It was great talking to you.
Brilliant, Deborah. Thank you. So that was Deborah Roppolo, the author coming on tonight. Thanks a million, Deborah, for coming on. So thanks everyone for tuning in to today's podcast, Mark's Motivational Podcast, Authors Tuesday. So we'll talk to you real soon, maybe Thursday for another episode. Thanks again, Deborah. Take care.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.